Everybody, it's Francis, and I'm here for your weekly video. Last time I talked about shoot houses, and the times before that we talked about the various anti-war zines that were coming out during the Vietnam War. I'm going to take it back even further at this point. So what we're going to kind of talk about here is this is the Lowell Offering. Now this is quite possibly one of the very first zines that was created. So the Lowell Offering was this huge, like, not, you can't really say it's a zine because it was big, but it was a quarterly thing that was put out by the Lowell Textile Company. It was started by a preacher of some kind, but it was everything that was inside of it was written by the Lowell girls. The Lowell girls are the women and girls from the ages of like 15 to 35 who worked in these textile mills. So, and this is 1840s, like 1830s, 1840s. So, you can imagine, not great. But the reason why the Lowell Offering exists, though, is because like it was shit conditions in these places, but also it was better than in England. Like, the idea is they paid the women better. They paid them half as much as the men, but they paid them better than like other sweatshop labor areas, and they had schools. They made sure that the girls and the women that were coming there were kept busy and not like worked to death, but like maintained education, go to school, learning how to do womanly things in the 1830s and 1840s. So this I wanted to draw from because there's a lot of really interesting stuff, and like I said, these are huge, and I've been going through it. So this is all women. It's only written. Everything is written by the women of the Lowell. The Lowell girls, the women who worked at the Lowell factories. Everything's written by them, and it spans all kinds of stuff. There's farcical stuff. There's serious things, there's science, there's discussions of labor rights, and the Lowell Press ended up feeding into another, like, some of the early some of the early unionist magazines, because this is like really the very beginning of organized labor in the 1800s. Like, you read about strikes, in late 1800s, early 1900s. We're 180 years removed from this, and this is some very early stuff for labor organizing. So I wanted to bring this up for not only because it's very interesting because we're getting perspective from women during a time where women didn't write stuff down. Who knew if they if a woman was educated enough, and in those times, depending on where you're at. So this is so I wanted to do it because of that, but also because, as I said, this is very early labor talk. So I'm going to add two things. We've got The Dignity of Labor, which is a short thing written by a woman who wants to espouse why she should be able to go to work. Very different from what we have, from some of the arguments that we have now. And then we're also going to talk. I found an excerpt from a whole, like, in this one. There's a whole bunch of stuff about sciences, and the sciences are discussed or they're written as discussions going back and forth. So one person is asking the questions, and the other, just as a normal conversation, conversational, not really interview type. So I wanted to bring part of that out because they talk about the Iguanodon. The Iguanodon was a dinosaur that was discovered in 1822. So this is only like 20 years after the very first like dinosaur was found, and they're talking about them as and who knows what else we're going to find. They talk about amber, they talk about all kinds of stuff. So, and it's the whole thing about geology, and they have physiology information in here, kind of laid out the same way. So there's really some really cool stuff. So this is The Dignity of Labor. From whence originated the idea that it is derogatory to a lady's dignity or a blot upon the female character to labor? And who is the first to say sneeringly, "Oh, she works for a living"? Surely such ideas and expressions ought not grow on Republican soil. The time has been when ladies of the first rank were accustomed to busy themselves in domestic employment. Homer tells of his princess who used to draw water from the springs and wash with their own hands the finest linens of their respective families. The famous Lucretia used to spin in the midst of her attendants. The wife of Ulysses, after the siege of Troy, employed herself in weaving until her husband returned to Ithaca. And in later times, the wife of George III of England has been represented as spending a whole evening in hemming pocket handkerchiefs while her daughter Mary sat in the corner darning socks. So, hey, look, we're already fucking working, so pay us for our labor. Few American fortunes will support a woman who is above the calls of her family, and the man of sense, in choosing a companion to jog with him through the uphills and downhills of life, I really miss writing like that. Choosing a champion to jog with him through all the uphills and downhills of life, would sooner choose one who had to work for a living than one who thought it beneath her to soil her pretty hands with manual labor, although she possessed her thousands. To be able to earn one's own living by laboring with the hand should be reckoned among female accomplishments. And I hope the time is not far distant when none of my countrywomen will be ashamed to have known that they are better versed and useful than they are in ornamental accomplishments. So, this is very much let me work so that I can have liberation. And what. That was also, in the a lot of the labor rights movements, kind of what we talk about now as well, raising minimum wage, making sure that everybody has a livable wage, women being able to earn their own their own wage, their own way to have a living income. That's a freedom that is just kind of not really thought about at this time, but. 1840s. This is 1840, so it's a very very early stages of discussing labor and discussing why labor is important. And now we've got people who talk about cutting more hours and how we should be things should be getting easier because we no longer have to labor as hard with our hands. But what a difference 180 years in human technology makes. All right. So let's go. All right. So, like I said, this is there's a lot of pages that are dedicated just to the geology part of this. Sorry, I'm my straw here. Marco Rubio, thirsty boy here. So there's a lot of discussion about geology. There's multiple pages that come before this talking about sandstone, the layering of mica and how it mixes with the granite and what that all means. There's also some really interesting stuff talking about meteorites, like where they come from and how some scientists of the time think that it's that forms in the atmosphere and falls to the ground. Others believe that it's volcanoes or throwing rock up in the air and rock just falls down sometimes, or metal. And then some believe that it's just like chunks from the moon that are flying at us. And fuck it, they didn't know. I mean, that all sounds. If I didn't know shit about science, that all sounds pretty good to me. All right. So, all right. Where did I want to start with this? Doesn't matter. So Anne, Eloise, and Isabel, I believe, are the characters here. See what a pretty piece of granite we found. It is so dark and sparkling. Yes, it contains a great deal of black mica. Granite is composed of quartz, mica, and feldspar. Gneiss, of which I see you have a specimen, is composed of the same minerals as quartz. I have seen a piece of amber with an insect embedded in it. Fucking Jurassic Park, man. All the way back in the 1840 Jurassic Park shit. Maybe that's where he stole the idea from. With an insect embedded in it in a good state of preservation. Although the amber was found many feet below the surface of the ground in the coal mines of Pennsylvania. What is amber and how came that insect there? As it is generally found with ignit, it is supposed to be resin from wood, changed by being so long in the earth. The insect must have become entangled, as we see in them in the gums of fruit trees. By the accession of resinous substance, they are completely covered by the changes such as have been noticed, buried far below the present surface of the earth. So this is really like, I mean, the scientific method is around by now, but like the way that you do science is, having a lot, science was done with a lot of discussion and saying, well, I can see here how it is and how it is there. So you take this, chunk of amber and like, oh, a thing. This amber must be coming from tree trunks of trees because we see that happen with bugs here. You can see stuff get trapped in the gum of it and get entangled. So, and these are again like these are all very well educated women, for the time that are having these discussions and then putting these out here for everybody else to read and everybody else to take these ideas and the science in. Oh, how I would love to see some of the stupendous animals and vegetables that have been excavated from the depths. Mr. Mantle, in his illustrations of the geology of Sussex, tells us as the giant megalosaurus and yet the more giant iguanodon, to whom the groves of palms and arborescent ferns would be mere beds of reeds, and who are of such prodigious magnitude that the existing animal creation presents us with no fit objects of comparison. Imagine, he says, an animal of the lizard tribe, three or four times as large as the largest crocodile, having jaws with teeth in size of with teeth equal in size to the incisors of the rhinoceros and crested with horns. Such a creature must have been the iguanodon, nor are the inhabitants of the water much less wonderful. Witness the plesiosaurus, which only required wings to be a flying dragon. 3 or 4 times as large as a crocodile, and with a crocodile will enclose an ox in his jaws. It seems utterly incredible, but I know these facts are too well authenticated to be doubted. Oh, what may change? What changes have there been? Well, might Young say, what is the world itself? Thy world, a grave. Where is the dust that has not been alive? The spade, the plow disturb our ancestors. From the human mold we reap our daily bread. The globe around the earth's hollow surface shakes, and its ceiling of her is the ceiling of her sleeping sons. And those lines of Beatty, Beatty? I never saw their full meaning until now. He says, art, empire, earth itself, to change are doomed. Earthquakes have raised to heavens the humble veil, engulfs the mountain's mighty mass and tomb. Where the Atlantic rolls wide, continents have bloomed. And that is, they're talking about the movements of the earth, seismic activity, oceans being where there was land once upon a time, things moving back and forth, and how that's just how it is. Everything is, we're just living on top of the bones of everything that's come before us, and we will become the bones of that ourselves one day, and the glorious march of the earth will continue on, I guess. Just like I said, I recently read about this because I read about how the women of these textile mines were some of the first women to start organizing because they were getting, they have to work, 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, and then they were getting more hours tacked on, but they weren't getting more pay. They were having to work faster, weren't getting more pay, The same thing of like, oh, we're making more money, and not making sure that money goes down to to your workers. So there was a lot of that going on. And that's how I found out about the Lowell women. And just the, just how people had to live back then, man. I don't like working my 8 hours and just thinking about these women having to do 16 hours and everybody having to do that kind of stuff. I mean, hell, you were 5 years old, you'd be working in a coal mine in the 1840s. This is still during slavery. I just realized that, how far back we're reaching into American history. All right. So I hope you guys liked this little jog out from what we've been doing. I really love finding a lot of these old things. I have some St. Louis zines that I've been kind of looking at, and just all kinds of other really cool, just old publishings, old printings, old things like this that you just don't really do these days anymore. So I'm still digging in. If you've got anything that you might like that you want to throw my way, let me know and we'll take a look at that. But thanks. We'll talk to you next week.